So this section is going to be a bit more just rambly, I guess. So if you don't like rambly sections where I'm kind of talking off the top of my head, then make sure to just skip ahead to the next time section. But what I'm talking about here is what in particular I liked about this game. As obviously this is meant to be a critique, so I will be talking about also what I didn't like and how I would change it. What I've got down here is basically talking about how the assassin in this game is more of a pawn in this game. Ezio, for example, is definitely the one who feels in charge, especially in AC2. You end up seeing that he's pretty much is the main man in charge. Like, he isn't in the Order yet, obviously. But by the end of Brotherhood, he is officially the mentor of the Creed, so he has always been the one who's going to lead the ranks. Arno, however, never feels like a character who's necessarily in charge. He just does what he wants, and isn't necessarily doing it for the Creed itself. And what I really like about this, honestly, is just how it's one of the first times that you're seeing the Creed at like more of a full point, where you get more of the toxic side of it, where they are just using pretty much their assassins to just go take down targets, not really caring. None of the higher-ups really do any of it anymore. They don't really care. For example, you have Ezio, who ends up becoming the mentor, but he's still willing to get his hands dirty. All of these assassins who are in the council are not willing to do so. They just send Arno off on the little just quests to go kill people. And obviously, you're going to do that once you get higher up, but I just kind of really like how they do decide to just keep people in the loop. They just go, you know what, we're just going to send people down. We're going to send our foot soldiers, this sort of thing. We're too built up now. I think it's a very good take that they decide to do, because not many games, or at least not many in the franchise, were willing to go down this route. When you consider, for example, in Assassin's Creed 4, the Brotherhood is kind of more built up. It's mainly because you aren't playing as a character that's primarily Assassin's focused. You don't really care too much. You're primarily Edward the Pirate, who is an assassin second, versus, let's say, all the other games where you are assassins first. In 1, in 2, in 3, in 5, for example, you're an assassin first. In Syndicate, you're an assassin first. However, Unity's the only one where you kind of see the Order at its, like, height. Like, in Unity, you're seeing an assassin's order that's at its pinnacle. Like, it's not getting better than this. And that's kind of the point of this game, which is the idea of just pushing you down the path of, well, is it good that they're at this point? Maybe a little bit of starvation is kind of what keeps them going, keeps them in the correct mind space. Because we see what happens in Rogue when the Creed basically ends up becoming at its full power, and they kind of become a bit twisted in their ideals. They aren't necessarily evil fully, but they aren't necessarily good either. And it's something that I do find interesting, and I really did enjoy in this game. But yeah, that's pretty much one of the first areas of this game that I liked. Another area this game does really well, and I really liked, was the way they put across the Templars in this game. I found that the way they did this was just a brilliant mechanism. They decided to put across the Templars as if they weren't just these heinous bad guys. Like, the Templars were working and living alongside the Assassins at one point. They were actually working together. They were living together. They weren't dealing with everything in such a way that everyone had to be murdered from the other side. They realized, oh, maybe a truce might be a good thing. And you end up meeting, obviously, the fanatics of the Templar Order who undo all of that ideas. But realistically, you get a Templar Order in this game that you haven't really seen ever in any of the games prior. And you get close to it with 3, very close, but it isn't there yet. 3 is still very much the case of the Templars want the Assassins dead and not even considered to be coming back. In Rogue, what you're seeing is the undoing of what Haytham wanted. Haytham wanted to get rid of the Assassin's Creed, and by doing so, it ends up leading to what ends up happening in 3 later on. But what you get in this game is just such a wonderful turnaround of events that you've never experienced in any of the other games before. You're looking at the Assassin's Creed franchise as just a general, oh, we're a shadow background organization who just wants the pieces of Eden. In this game, you're actually getting a more political stance of this game, as the Templar Order is effectively order, and then the Assassins are a bit more chaotic, that sort of thing. They believe in pure freedom. Templars believe in pure order. They're the left and the right of the political spectrum, basically, as a whole. And at the middle ground, you get the actual perfect ambience of both of them put together. And this game does it really well, and I really enjoy it. I don't know, I know this is all very rambly at this section, but I genuinely love how they put across the Templars in this game and the Assassins, being more of an actual shadow background organization that aren't actually massively well known. A lot of the other games, because obviously you're playing as the protagonist, you never really get to experience the game as not an assassin or not anything else. You don't really end up realizing how in the shadows these organizations are, and also how much influence they have over the political sphere of this game. Like what you see with Germain when he's basically starving out France and hiding it all away to make it as if the political leaders are the ones who are like hiding away all the food. The next one is about Germain and how he was hidden very well in plain sight, and I love it. It adds a very much a fun replay value to this game that you don't really experience with a lot of games out there. I like saying this a lot, which is this game does a lot which a lot of games wish they could do, but the only reason why this game is looked so heavily down upon is because of its initial launch. The whole premise of Germain as a character is that he is literally masking himself from the world. He looks like this guy and he portrays himself towards, let's say, Arno, for example, as if he's this guy who could be harmless, who could do nothing. He gets shocked when he has to kill someone, that sort of thing, but it turns out, oh, he's actually the guy who's behind taking down the entire original Templar Order, doing all these things in the pursuit of a book and a sword. And because of that, you end up finding out a lot of things about Germain as a character, and I think it's actually done really brilliantly, and I very much enjoyed how they portrayed him in this game. A lot of the other games like to just go down the route of pure evil, pure evil, pure evil. I think in this, Germain is evil, but I wouldn't say he is the definition of full insanity complex. For example, I think that there's a lot of characters, let's say like Charles Lee, you see his development, but really he is just mental. He's just mental by the end of the game. And like you obviously get to see Charles Lee's descent, but like it's never really the case that you're visiting a character that you're like, oh, you're evil because, you know, you actually have good reason to kind of be evil. Like, you've got those characters out there who are really great characters because they have an understandable cause. It's why a lot of people loved Thanos, for example, is even though his methods were extremely bad, you can understand to a point of what he was getting at. And it's the same with characters like Killmonger in Black Panther, where people understood, oh, his methods actually make sense. And even, for example, the new Batman film is a great example of this. I saw this the other day, and honestly, it does a really good job. The Riddler's point is very understandable. However, obviously, the way he's going about it is very crazy, but it's very understandable of why he's angry. And I think that's what they tried to do in this game, was make an understandable villain, but because of the amount of amount of development, I guess that makes sense, I don't know. The lack of development of the character didn't allow you to kind of understand his fall a little bit more. I think they would have been better off at least giving a little bit more of a backstory towards all the characters, a little bit more anyway. But yeah, besides those two things, I've also got another one in there as well. The Arno and Elise dynamic in this game. What I genuinely loved that this game did really well is that Elise is pretty much the main character of this game. Arno is very likable, but honestly, I would say Elise is even likable. You could have put Elise or had Elise as her own game, and that would have been amazing as well. Games typically struggle to have two really powerful and eye-grabbing characters in this game, or at least in games in general, not in this game. And honestly, their relationship, being a Romeo and Juliet story but in Assassin's Creed, did work very well. And the fact that by the end of the game, Arno loses Elise and he doesn't do what he has done in the past and breaks his life down. He's actually grown as a character. Her death will be something that he remembers forever, but it won't be something that impacts his life in an extremely negative way that you've seen in the past. This story cared so much about Elise that you could swap the entire story out with her instead of playing as Arno, or they could have made a DLC where you got her entire perspective of this entire thing and people would love it. And honestly, it's something that borderline I would love as well. I think that her character was done really well in this game, and it's something that wasn't too forced and was done really just well. She comes across as a really strong character who everyone loved, basically, that I've ever spoken to. Everyone enjoys her character. And I think that is purely down to the fact that it's not a character that's being pushed down your throat as you need to like this character. You have that a lot in games. And I think, for example, a character that, like, if you wanted to pull from the Assassin's Creed trilogy, or not trilogy, the Assassin's Creed franchise, would be someone like Sigurd in Valhalla. He's a character that I didn't care about, and they were really trying to make you like this character. And honestly, he's an awful character. I hated him so much. There's a lot of characters out there in different games. You've got games like The Last of Us Part 2 that really struggled with this dynamic, and a lot of people end up hating one of the main characters of this game, obviously because, you know, she kills Joel. But besides that, honestly, the issue comes down to the fact that a lot of games struggle to make characters that are powerful purely because they care too much about pushing a ideal. That's down to the premise of it. And that's pretty much why I do love Elise as a character. She was a very well developed for the limited amount of time that she had, and was really powerful on screen. Every single moment she was in, you're caring about her more than you're caring about Arno. And you can understand why she is the way she is. But again, like I mentioned earlier, one of the main areas that I actually really did enjoy was just seeing how they both interact with each other throughout this game.